With the beta changes for Phoebe and Brant, there's going to be a lot of people asking how big are the changes and does it really impact their performance in the current meta? And I'm here to say that yes, quite a lot has changed with the new buffs for Phoebe and Brant. So I'm going to first explain what the changes do in the first place, and then I'll be going over all of the videos that I talked about and see if anything major that I discussed is now outdated and wrong. That way, you guys are fully up to date with all the information on Phoebe and Brant. First, I will discuss the changes to Brant because they were less numerous and have less of an impact. Brant has gotten 2 buffs to his kit. First of all, to his resonance skill, getting buffs all across the board, which is very nice to see. And then the second one is to his Forte circuit, specifically his return from Ash's Forte skill. A lot of the multiplier has shifted, so where most of it is now in the final hit, meaning that, well, if you want to see one big nuke number, Brant is going to be better at doing that. Overall, it got a buff of about 200% of Brant's attack. It's nothing major, but it does help Brant do his role better, aka doing damage, and it reaffirms that he's supposed to be more of a damage tool and less of a sustain. Now moving on to Phoebe, because her changes were quite numerous. First of all, her intro skill. I want to cover this one first because it's the most minor of the changes, being that it now no longer applies a stack of Spectrofrazzle. This means that her intro skill now has next to no uses. So if you need to sacrifice anyone's intro skill, Phoebe's is going to be the one. Now on to the actual relevant kit changes. First of all, the multipliers. She has gotten overall nerfs, with there being a nerf towards her Resonance Liberation and to her enhanced basic attack. While this sounds bad, it gets made up for with some really big changes that I'm going to talk about later, with later actually just meaning right now. First of all, I want to talk about her Forte circuit, because that got the big change. So first of all, when you enter the Absolution or the Confession state, you will now automatically apply a stack of Spectrofrazzle. This is where the stack from the intro skill went. So yeah, overall, not really anything happened here. However, she got a really big number buff within her Absolution state. The damage amplification to her enhanced heavy attacks went from 160% to 256%. This is quite insane. This number buff on its own just kinda seems ridiculous. But that's not even where it all ends. Her enhanced basic attack can now be cast one more time within Absolution. However, the activation was changed to no longer be the enhanced heavy attack and rather be a separate attack that has a good multiplier on its own. So it's kind of a redistribution, but not really, because she still gets 4 enhanced heavy attacks, but now she has an extra attack. The multiplier buff to her Resonance Liberation and Outro skill was also changed. It was buffed from being 140% to now being 255%. This makes it so that her Resonance Liberation and Outro skill are now a larger part of Phoebe's damage, which is very nice to see. And the sequences were also changed. Her S1 was buffed to coincide with the multiplier boost buffs, going from 255% to being around 450%. So this makes the S1 even better. The S2 got nerfed to, instead of being 150% damage amp to the Outro skill in Absolution, it's now 90%. However, it does also come with the change that the enhanced heavy attack within Confession now also gets buffs. The S3 was buffed from 85% multiplier increase to 123, making it one of Phoebe's strongest sequences. And the S6 was entirely reworked. Instead of giving 50% crit damage, it will now make it so that the mirror ring from Phoebe's skill will freeze enemies for 2 seconds, and summoning a mirror ring will cast an additional enhanced heavy attack, making it so that Phoebe goes from 4 to 5. Overall, these changes to Phoebe are massive buffs, and they make it so she is a lot stronger as a character. But now I'm going to go by each video aside from the kit overviews, and I'll explain to you what is now outdated. First of all, this would be the fundamental flaw with Phoebe video. This video is now entirely irrelevant. Okay, I don't want to say entirely irrelevant, but a lot of the points within that video have been addressed. The main point of that video was the fact that Phoebe felt like she had no place in the current meta, being that her hypercarry teams were not really that stellar due to her giving herself so many buffs, and the fact that her sub-DPS mode was entirely unusable due to the fact that we don't have any real way to exploit Spectral Frazzle damage. The change in Phoebe's numbers made it so Phoebe is now not only a strong dual carrier as she was before, she's now also an excellent hypercarry, boasting some pretty incredible numbers, especially now that we have seen her full AoE and her attack speed has also been buffed. Phoebe is now a great option to deal AoE damage, and she still retains the fact that she is very flexible with her teams due to there no being real specific buffer for Phoebe. So overall, this video has mainly become outdated because Phoebe's numbers have just been buffed by so much that her hypercarry playstyle is now just really strong. I will say that with the suggestions that I gave at the end of the video, Kuro did not do anything with them. They kind of just doubled down on the things that made Phoebe hard to work with, but doubled down on them so hard that it kind of just made Phoebe a great hypercarry anyway. But it did come with the consequence that Phoebe's dual carry teams are now stronger than they feel like they should be. So I don't expect Phoebe to stay in her current state, but I do think that if she were to release in her current state, it would be a lot more positive than before. Second off, the Brant vs Shorekeeper video. The Brant vs Shorekeeper comparison was one that I wasn't really comfortable with in the first place, because Brant and Shorekeeper's roles are always meant to be different. The Shorekeeper is a pure supporter, whereas Brant is a dual DPS while also giving shields and healing for extra utility. So Shorekeeper and Brant, as a comparison, was always going to be iffy. However, with Brant's damage being buffed, he does have more of a leg up now, making him especially good with dual carry, where Shorekeeper feels a little bit weird, but Shorekeeper is still great for dual carry. So overall, not much has changed here other than just Brant does more damage now. But now here comes the big one that has left a lot of changes for me, being Phoebe vs Jinhsi. So first of all, I wanted to give the overall conclusion that I drew in that video, being that Jinhsi is a better character than Phoebe. Phoebe's real advantage here, compared to Jinhsi, was the fact that she had more teammates, but Jinhsi still has a good amount of teammates to work with, while also having a higher damage ceiling, because most of Jinhsi's copium options were also as good as Phoebe's actual options, making it so that Jinhsi would overall have more value. However, because Phoebe's numbers have now been buffed, she is consistently a great carry, using a lot of different teammates. So Phoebe has managed to keep all of the positive qualities about herself while getting rid of her biggest negative quality, being her lack of good hypercarry teams. However, is Phoebe on the level of Jinhsi yet? I think that it's a lot more comparable now, but I still think Jinhsi at her top is going to be better than Phoebe at her top, at least in a hypercarry team. If we're talking about dual carry, Phoebe can very much surpass Jinhsi. However, be aware that these teams do require more effort than the Jinhsi hypercarry team. But now, I'm willing to say that Phoebe vs Jinhsi is a lot more of an account-dependent question, instead of just Phoebe is worse than Jinhsi in almost every way. For example, if you have a Zhezhi, you should be getting Jinhsi. However, if you have Zhezhi and Carlotta, it would be more efficient for you to get Phoebe, because Phoebe doesn't steal a teammate from your Carlotta. So if you want to know exactly what to do for your account, be sure to ask me. And now for the final video that I made, being Phoebe vs Brant. In this video, I concluded that Phoebe and Brant are not that far off in terms of power, with Phoebe and Brant tying in a dual carry role, whereas Phoebe is a better hypercarry and Brant is better as a support. And as for that, nothing really changed. However, I gave the win to Brant before because he has actual supportive qualities that can help currently existing characters, whereas Phoebe feels a lot more like she's in her own world and incomplete. But because Phoebe's damage got buffed so much, the fact that her teammates don't synergize perfectly with her no longer matters, because Phoebe just has so much brute strength that it kind of stopped being relevant. So now I think Phoebe is going to be a more efficient pull than Brant. But don't worry, Brant is still going to be excellent, and I would suggest pulling for the one that you prefer most. So, are you happy with the beta changes? I certainly am. I think making Phoebe better as a hypercarry is the exact thing I was missing, because now she's a lot more accessible to a lot more people. But if your opinion differs, be sure to let me know in the comments below. While you're down there, you can like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton. If you want to ask me a question, you can do that in my Discord server, where I'm pretty active. The link is in the description. If you just want to hear my random thoughts on stuff, be sure to check me out on Twitter or X, which is also in the description. But that'll be it from me. Peace.